I think what we're going to see is, probably an elevated risk of a recession.
BusinessJournalDaily.com. 3 Minutes With is brought to you by Farmers National Bank.
Save, borrow, and invest with Farmers. Take heart knowing you're helping create a strong community. Mind your money at Farmers. Talk directly to local decision makers about your loans, investments, and insurance. Farmers. Fiercely local, fiercely loyal.
I think 2025 is going to be so far, if I had to describe it in one word, it's uncertainty. So there's a lot of economic uncertainty out there right now, given everything with the shift in policy from the new administration. And so I think what we're going to see is, probably an elevated risk of a recession, a national recession sometime this year, compared to what we've seen in the past. It doesn't mean necessarily that we'll have an actual downturn. But I think from an economic perspective, the reason we care a lot about uncertainty is if there's more uncertainty in the horizon, consumers are less likely to make big purchases. Businesses are less likely to make large investment decisions. So basically, people just kind of hold back and wait. And so that can be detrimental to the economy in the short term.
Are there any key traits that you see consistently popping up in areas that are doing well economically?
Yeah. So yes, short answer. I think the way that I would look at those regions are, what areas, if you go back over a long period of time, and so imagine we go back to, say, 1990, which, doesn't sound like that long ago for us, but it really is. And you say, what areas really changed between 1990 and today that have done a lot better than the average place? And those are the areas that a couple themes jump out. We see areas that have a high concentration of skilled workers. So one way is they have a high concentration of people who live there that have college degrees. That's not the only metric that we look at for a skilled workforce, but it's one that we've tracked for a long period of time. So they have skilled workforces. They also tend to be places that have research facilities associated with universities. So large research universities are also areas where we've seen a lot of growth over the last 3 decades. So kind of leveraging, Youngstown State University and everything that the university can become, I think is important for the future of the Valley.
How could local and regional leaders, people who, the type of people who will be at this event, how can they play a role in shaping long-term economic resilience in their areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. Though I think it's a lot easier than we often want to think. It just requires a commitment over a long period of time. And the way that I would best describe that, if you think about the Mahoning Valley 20 years from now, what it might look like, and how do we improve the relative positioning of the Valley? Well, the people who are going to be there 20 years from now are more than likely the people who live there today. You may have some net in migration, but largely the people who live in a given area today are the people who are going to live there 20 years from now, which means you want to make investments in the people who are currently living there. And I'm not suggesting this necessarily because I happen to be a college professor, but I think investing in workforce development, starting with primary and secondary education, workforce training, I think are things that really would help the region propel itself over the next 20 years. And the other piece that I would want to point out is I'm not necessarily suggesting the region doesn't do this well when I say this, but the region should be very mindful. Elected officials and other businesses in the region should be mindful that the region is very economically integrated. So if you have for example, a business that locates in Boardman, or you have a business that locates in Austintown, or you have a business that opens up in Warren, the people who work there are going to live all over the Valley. They're not just living in those communities. We know that from the data. So we shouldn't necessarily think that a business locating in Canfield means that the rest of the Valley has lost. The Valley wins anytime we have those particular successes.
BusinessJournalDaily.com. 3 Minutes With is brought to you by Farmers National Bank.
Save, borrow, and invest with Farmers. Take heart knowing you're helping create a strong community. Mind your money at Farmers. Talk directly to local decision makers about your loans, investments, and insurance. Farmers. Fiercely local, fiercely loyal.